I kicked my mother-in-law out after she criticized my parenting, suggested spanking my toddler, disrespected me in my own home, and my husband said I was overreacting instead of backing me up. Okay, so I need to know if I'm being unreasonable here. My mother-in-law is a lot. She's always been critical of me, but I've tried to keep the peace for my husband's sake. Since the very beginning of my relationship with my husband, she's made her opinions clear about how I do things. I always knew she was opinionated, but over the years her constant criticism has worn me down. However, for the sake of family harmony, I've done my best to brush it off. Last week, she called and said her apartment was being fumigated and asked if she could stay with us for a few days. I wasn't thrilled, but I agreed because, well, what else could I do? She didn't ask so much as inform me, and declining would have made me look like the bad guy. I figured I could survive a few days. I mean, how bad could it really be? Well, it turns out pretty bad. Things started off okay. She moved into our guest room, and I did my best to make her feel comfortable. I even stocked up on some of her favorite snacks, thinking maybe if she was in a good mood, we could get through the visit without too much friction. Unfortunately, that was wishful thinking. By day 2, she was already nitpicking everything. She criticized how I folded the laundry, how I cooked dinner, and even how I organized the pantry. I mean, really? The pantry? Who cares if the cereal is on the second shelf instead of the first? But according to her, it was all wrong. At first, I bit my tongue. I smiled through gritted teeth and reminded myself that it was only temporary. I didn't want to cause drama, especially because my husband tends to take a let's not rock the boat approach when it comes to his mother. I knew if I started pushing back, it would turn into a whole thing, and I didn't want that. But then she crossed a line. I have a 3-year-old son, and like most toddlers, he can be a handful. He's going through a phase where he throws tantrums when he doesn't get his way. It's normal. He's learning how to regulate his emotions. I've been trying to handle it with patience and gentle parenting techniques. I don't believe in yelling or spanking, and I try to teach him why certain behaviors aren't acceptable rather than just punishing him outright. It's not always easy, but I believe it's the best approach. The other day, my son had a meltdown because I wouldn't let him have candy before dinner. He cried, stomped his feet, the whole works. Instead of yelling at him, I knelt down to his level, calmly explained why he couldn't have candy, and offered him a healthier snack instead. He was still upset, but I stayed firm. Eventually, he accepted the alternative snack and calmed down. My mother-in-law had been watching the whole thing from the couch. The moment I stepped into the kitchen to grab the snack, she scoffed and said, "No wonder he acts like this. You're too soft on him. Back in my day, we didn't coddle kids like this. A little smack on the bottom would straighten him out." I was stunned. I turned to her and said, "I don't believe in hitting my child, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't suggest that." She rolled her eyes and muttered something about how kids these days are spoiled. At that moment, I was fuming. I wanted to snap back, but I took a deep breath and walked away. I didn't want to escalate things, but I was so hurt. I've worked hard to be a patient and loving parent, and she just dismissed it as being too soft. Later that night, I told my husband what happened. I expected him to be upset with her, but instead, he just sighed and said, "She's from a different generation. Just let it go." Let it go? I told him I didn't want her staying with us anymore. I said that if she was going to undermine me as a parent in my own home, then I didn't want her here. He got upset, saying it was only for a few more days and that I was overreacting. He kept insisting that she didn't mean it that way and that she was just old-fashioned. But to me, it wasn't just about her opinion on discipline. It was about respect. She was in my home, judging my parenting, and implying that my son needed to be hit in order to behave. That was not okay. The next morning, I decided I had enough. I sat down with my mother-in-law and told her that I didn't think it was a good idea for her to stay with us anymore, and that she should find a hotel. I tried to be as polite as possible, but she was furious. She accused me of being ungrateful and dramatic. "I do so much for this family, and this is how you treat me," she said. I reminded her that this was my home and that I needed to feel comfortable in it. She stormed off, called my husband at work, and told him I was kicking her out onto the streets. When he came home, he was livid. He told me I had blown things out of proportion and made things harder than they needed to be. I stood my ground and told him that if she couldn't respect me as a mother, she couldn't stay in my home. He sulked for the rest of the night, clearly upset that I had created unnecessary tension. Now, my husband and I are at a standstill. He thinks I should have just let it go for a few more days, while I feel like I had every right to set a boundary. My mother-in-law has been sending passive-aggressive texts about how she's sorry she's not good enough and just wanted to help. Meanwhile, other family members are chiming in, saying I should have been more accommodating. So, Aida for refusing to let my mother-in-law stay after she insulted my parenting? I feel like I'm justified, but everyone else seems to think I'm overreacting. I understand that different generations have different views on parenting, but my son is my child. I'm the one raising him, not her. I'm the one who has to deal with the long-term consequences of how he is treated now. It's not her place to tell me that my method is wrong just because it doesn't align with what she did decades ago. I've been as patient as I can, but there comes a point when I have to draw the line. This is about more than just one comment. It's about a pattern of disrespect. If my mother-in-law can't respect me as a mother, then she doesn't get to stay in my house. So what do you think? Am I the a-hole here?